Severe Weather Awareness Week continues. Today it's hurricanes and flooding. I'm meteorologist Robert Spedit, joined by the rock star meteorologist Louis Turner. Oh, you
Keep
know
going.
it.
Keep going. Stop. I appreciate it, Robert. Severe Weather Awareness Week. It's always good when there's no severe weather. You know what I mean? You're prepared. You're ahead of the game.
Because last year, to the day, we were in the middle of Severe Weather Awareness Week, and it was like Tornado Awareness Day.
Yeah.
And we got hit by multiple tornadoes here on the First Coast. We had those classic supercells. It was almost felt like perfect timing, but you're right. Today's calm weather.
Yep.
So we can look ahead and talk about what we're expecting.
It gives you time to dive into it. It gives you, because when you're in the middle of severe thunderstorms, you need to be in the act of talking about that. And of course, you're preparing people within it. But, you know, what we're doing right now, it's good because, I mean, as we look at, hurricanes of St. Augustine's past, I'm just guessing from the video, that's either Ian or Nicole.
Yeah, I think this one's Matthew. I have
Matthew.
like a montage.
This was a long, so we got a lot of St. Augustine.
But there's some Helene or some Milton in here. It's a montage of the greatest hits around the First Coast.
I'm telling you. Good to be brave. So that brings us to our theme. What is today's theme?
It's hurricanes and flooding, and specifically flooding associated with a hurricane. So we're talking about storm surge, heavy rainfall, these type of scenarios. I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, and there's some things that not that you need to just think about during or days before the storm, but you can start thinking about now and today, right? Sure. So we got some graphics here from the National Weather Service. If we could put these up on the screen here from our weather graphics, basically talking about some of the preparations you can do. So Malcolm, can you toss those up real quick? The weather graphics for us. So from the National Weather Service, basically talking about that Severe Weather Awareness Week here, and one of the things that talking about, and you can see it right there, that the roof ripped off that building there, it is your insurance. And I feel like this is something more and more as of late, Lou, that people need to start thinking about.
Yeah. 100%. And saving and budgeting for even more. Because here's my deal. Like, speaking from personal experience, and if you'll allow me to speak from my anecdote, which I know is a lot of people's story, is my homeowner's insurance, and I am technically not in an evacuation zone, which we'll talk about zones. In the traditional system, there are certainly county-wide evacuations that can happen, and I would be within that and where I live. But not being in a zone, technically, as far as the lettering, not technically, although everywhere in Florida is flood prone, anywhere you are, technically being elevated enough to not have to worry about any sort of major surge unless it was absolute archaic, just Armageddon style. My homeowner's insurance has made my mortgage, which is escrowed, about $600 more expensive per month. So this is something that everybody, a lot of people are dealing with, unless you're paying it, out of pocket, that first chunk, that one big chunk per year. A lot of people put it within a mortgage if you're a homeowner. And let me tell you, that's a hit. So yeah, insurance. But to consider that hit versus not having flood insurance, and you get a surge, water that's rising from below, that's not covered under traditional, homeowners insurance documents, right? And that's brutal, Robert.
And I've also heard these stories of, how the insurance policy has changed, and you might get a letter in the mail, and maybe you don't read it clearly.
We're in an electronic world right now. Like who takes, really, most people get envelopes mail, assume it's junk and throw it away.
I mean, personally, I'm not, I know it's very irresponsible of me, but I need to double check my policy because I'm not quite sure what the details on it if tomorrow a tree fell on my roof because of a hurricane. So that's one of the things they point out. It's a simple thing that you can do to check, and I got to do it myself to make sure your home's ready to go. But another thing is, these disaster preparedness plans for your families in the evacuation routes. And we always talk about that, and people say, okay, know your zone. We'll talk more about that in a second. But I think something as simple, they're like here, number 2, the disaster supply kit, is getting some water, some batteries, some games for the kids, throwing it in a bag and having like a go bag. I don't like saying that because it sounds like you're a criminal and you're ready to bounce, but a go bag, something where where all your passports are and all that good stuff, just in case those important documents you need to get out of the house here. Yeah. I think doing that now before, an impending hurricane is probably a smart move, right?
100%. And so knowing, where everything is, having I've had to do it, and in this job, just inside the business, we have to think about being here during hurricanes, not with our families. So we're tracking, and we're usually round the clock before, during, and then immediately after a storm. So the stress level of trying to prepare. Okay, so we know this is coming 7 days out. We can sort of wrap our minds around a cone pointing at a geographic location, and then the trip to the store is so stressful. And in that moment. So preparing now, why not? Especially the non-perishable things. I mean, a case of water is going to be a case of water. Just keep it in a cool, dry place in the house somewhere, and it's there. And it's not a rush and a throwing elbows against people who are just, preparing closer to time.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about this, talk about preparations. We mentioned this a few times, know your zone. You hear that, but, we're talking about flooding and hurricanes. The zone has really a lot to do with a storm surge. Now, this is specifically Duval County. Do have an article on our website at firstcoastnews.com. I listed these same maps for majority of our counties here across the First Coast. One thing that I really note, and it almost is surprising a little bit at first glance, is that like places like Fort George Island, Black Hammock Island, we're talking about even, Blount Island, a lot of these areas all along the Intracoastal Jacks Beach, these are Zone A, Lou.
Oh, for sure.
They're only a foot or two above sea level.
Yeah.
So even if we did get a Cat 1 in here, which we haven't in years, that would cause that entire area in Red Deer to flood potentially. So in
the north side, when we're looking at that St. Mary's River and the tributaries around that as well, that's the very northern kind of edge of Duval. The western edges of that's pretty far inland, technically from the ocean. So don't just think about knowing your zone. Well, I live 20 miles from the beach. It's not a big deal. No, in fact, if you're along one of the tributaries of the St. Johns River, the Hogan's Creek, the McCoy's Creek, then along and through San Marco, but even the areas, okay, so we got them alphabetized here. Go ahead and get, like Robert mentioned, go to the story, know your zone right now, and then you know it. But even if you're in that white area and it says Duval, you think to yourself, I'm not in an evacuation zone, I wouldn't have to. There will be, if there is a storm bad enough to warrant a countywide evacuation, then just because you're not in a zone, you would say to yourself, I'm in the Duval, and we just got to go. Right?
Because wind doesn't care about the level of sea level too.
Right.
And especially in a lot of these areas, that are outside of those flood prone spots, they got older trees,
Sure.
Those big old oaks and stuff that you have to worry about too. If you're talking about storm surge, just a quick little reminder of what exactly storm surge is. I think a lot of people here on the First Coast know, but basically a storm system surging water on shore. It is the forward motion. Think of a snowplow. Their most recent snowstorm, you might think of it that way, I suppose. But it also, lower pressure, all these factors come together, literally raises the ocean up. It is not just bigger waves. And that's why the know your zone in some of these evacuation areas are so large. So, Lou, we got hurricane season starts on June 1st. But what is it, like 5 of the last 7 years we've had a storm before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've got
June.
an A storm before. Absolutely. So the traditional sense of where it begins, you absolutely, we've had the May arrival before, and taking a look at your typical averages for when you get the first system back in 24, first named storm June 19th. So right there at the gun, right? And then our first major hurricane, Beryl, right? Beryl last year, that was June 30th. That was a big record-breaking storm. There got strong fast, right, and some really, really hot ocean water. Going back to the storm surge, you don't have to change the graphic, but
I can
for
bounce back real quick.
perspective's sake, the numbers matter. So the numbers that you show here with the levels of devastation, from perspective now, because you were showing some Matthew in St. Augustine, which had some really high, I think we're talking about like 5 feet, right?
Yeah.
That was your 5-foot surge for Matthew. So if you could put that in your mind's eye. Then you had Irma downtown, which was right around a 5-footer downtown. if I'm not mistaken. So those two are ones that really stick out in locals' minds. If you're around for Matthew or for Irma, you remember downtown how bad that was. So that's roughly 4.5 to 5 foot surge that will send water up into homes as far in as the Main Street Bridge, San Marco, Riverside, et cetera. So, and then of course we know St. Augustine, Davis Shores, they've been getting it even as recent as Nicole and Ian Nicole, and then the last couple of years with surges of 2 to 3 feet up onto Avenida Menendez in those neighborhoods. So that's your numbers there, and those are not direct hits. Mm-hmm. So that's another reminder that we have not had that in a long, long time.
Yeah. Actually, Malcolm, if you don't mind throwing up the footage that we just had here a moment ago, just so you can give that visual representation, because you're talking about 3 to 5 feet. This is 12 feet here. And this is what we're talking about. That's St. Augustine, what it looks like at a fraction of what our graphic kind of showed there. Mm-hmm. And you're in these scenarios, you're right. They were not a direct hit by any means. Actually, Duval County has been hit, since the 60s?
64, Dora, right?
Yeah. So it's been a hot second. And I think that's one reason why we continue to stress this. And I feel like we've gotten a couple good storms last year. Well, we had Debbie and Milton, which kind of impacted the fringes of Jacksonville. But I feel like it's been so long that that kind of memory lapse, or what's the proper expression I'm trying to find with this?
Yeah.
We've just kind of been used to these side swipes, and we haven't been hit directly, which is why we go back to stressing the severe weather awareness week here. I do want to, one more thing, Lou, before we kind of wrap up here, and hopefully everybody kind of understands, this severe weather risk. Yesterday, a shout out to you.
Shout out to you.
A shout out to me. Shout out
to John Jeffries.
John Jeffries. So yesterday was National Weather Person's Day. We got free ice cream from Bluebell because that's a thing.
Yeah.
And John Jeffries was one of the early American weather forecasters. Before the signing of the Declaration of Independence in Boston, he started taking weather observations. He said, "Ben Franklin, step aside with your kite. I got this. I'm a professional." Also, the movie Aeronauts, loosely based on him. He was one of the first people to go up in an actual balloon. I said weather balloon, but an actual balloon and take weather observations. Absolute legend. Every February 5th, we celebrate John Jeffries National Weather Person's Day. It's not just for TV meteorologists, but military consultants, National Weather Service. There are so many people that work in the field of weather, and shout out to everybody with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say, I don't want you to have to give a mea culpa here.
Okay.
Signing a Declaration of Independence Hall, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Philadelphia. We were saying Boston. Where's Boston? He was a Bostonian.
He was Boston.
He's a Boston guy.
Well, he's English. He's from London. This was when the colonies were here.
Okay.
But he was in Boston when he started taking weather obs.
I got a little nervous there. Okay. I'm getting my days and my times in my 1776s and 1774s. But God bless him for doing what he can with what he had.
The weather observations then were literally a dangerous mercury substance in your hand. And Ben Franklin's over here with a kite trying to get it hit by lightning.
Yeah.
And this guy's a legend, just getting in a balloon and going up 20,000 feet.
Unreal. Yeah, and we'll see if I come down and where.
Yes. Yeah. So absolute heroes in the pioneering stage of modern meteorology.
No relation to Katie Jeffries, by the way. It's spelled different.
Yeah.
It's spelled different.
Yes.
It's R-I-E. Yeah. So, but maybe something along the lines down generations, because she has that inquisitive curiosity about her. So maybe just maybe. I feel adequately prepared now, Robert. Thanks to you.
Oh yes, thanks to you, sir.
Thanks to you.
We are prepared, and I wasn't joking. I do need to check my insurance.
100%.
I don't know. It's embarrassing.
It today, or do it before it's Friday, maybe Monday, but nonetheless, check that. Know your zone. Be prepared. Think about the potential for that storm surge, where you live, and if you've got those three things, maybe a couple of extra cases of water around, man, you are like ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go. And that's the point of the Severe Weather Awareness Week. Thank you, Robert, for inviting me on to talk.
Always. We might be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow is heat and wildfires. We were just talking about, wildfires out in LA.
Sure.
We looked back at the fires in
Flagler County.
Yeah, Flagler County, the firestorm. What
Yeah.
year was that again? I almost forgot. I think
Was it 08? Or it was in the 90s?
07 or 08.
Okay, and then there was also around 2010, 2011, when I first got to town, there weren't as many homes threatened as like Flagler County, but Okefenokee swamp burn. There was the Baldwin Bay fire.
I remember
west side
that
of
one.
Duval, and that had the whole summer was just in smoke. I mean, it was like just orange nights and sunsets because of that smoke just every single night. So it's certainly something we have to be prepared for and to think about, and it's part of our forecasting. It's one of those things, if you get real dry kind of winter times, you get the issues and all the ingredients there for it. So
Well, that's tomorrow's.
tomorrow,
Today, though, be smart. Check those insurance policies.
not letting guys roll in their wheelchair
Don't
around
be like
the
that.
seawall
Don't
in
be
the
like
hurricane.
that. It's good footage, but don't do that. And yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure you watch First Coast News at noon, 5, 6. Lou, GMJ. Thanks for checking in.